Setting up a saltwater aquarium is difficult. There comes a point right after the assembly of the aquarium, like I've done here with the sea cardinal tank, that you are going to have a bunch of decisions to make. And those decisions are going to determine how the next 3 to 6 months to maybe even a year of your life and the life of your tank is going to go. Let's talk about those. So the very first thing is water. And we think that water is probably just very simple. You fill the tank up with water and you're good. No. For most of us in the continental United States and even everywhere else in the world, our tap water is absolutely trash. It's filled with all kind of antimicrobials, antibacterials. Sometimes there's even old medications in there. The filtration systems that we have in some of these towns and, counties and parishes and things are just not up to par with the quality of the water that we need for our reef aquariums. So I highly recommend that you run an RODI unit. An RODI unit like the one that I have here in my utility room is not an expensive piece of equipment anymore. These things used to be $500, $600, $700, but you can get one now on Amazon for about $155. A typical 4-stage RODI unit is going to contain a sediment filter, a carbon filter, a reverse osmosis membrane, and a deionization chamber. Within these 4 chambers, this filter has the ability to remove almost everything from the water that is going to be going into your aquarium. Occasionally, like you see here, I had to add a 5th stage, and sometimes you have to add a few more to just absolutely get the last little bit of everything out. I had to put that one in place because I was having a silicate problem, and I used a special deionization resin that's called a silica buster to take that out. And now at this point, the water that's coming out of that is perfectly pure for my aquariums. Oh, and hey, here's a pro tip for you. I didn't feel like carrying buckets and stuff all over my house, and actually I can't since I got hurt with my back injury and all that. So this is a 100-foot roll of ice maker line for a refrigerator. I connected it into my RODI unit, and whenever I need to do anything with RODI water, like top off aquariums or whatever anywhere in the house, I can just take this down, run it, loop it through here. Right now, it's going right in there. I can take it into the living room. I can take it anywhere I need, and I don't have to carry freaking buckets of water around. Now, there are places out there in the world that have tap water that is good enough to use for our aquariums. Some places even have tap water that is like reef keeping gold. I was watching the Reef Bum podcast the other day, which would be cool to be a part of. Anyway, I was watching that podcast the other day, and this is what one of the guests, Dong Zhao, said about his tap water.
So that garnet always have a great polyp extension, and that is because I use tap water. Well, God forbid. Don't duplicate that because the water, my tap water is unique because it's produced by our tank, and the water source is very good. So that's why. But don't try tap water.
So you got some magical tap water there, huh, Dong?
Oh, actually, yeah, it is because in our tap water, the 2 elements stands out. Actually, it's naturally occurring. It's iron and manganese.
Really?
Yes.
Now, his water excluded, pretty much the rest of us are going to want to be running an RODI filter. We just don't want all that crap from the tap water going into our tanks, causing us problems later down the road. Now, some people do it and they don't have issues. My recommendation would be using an RODI unit. So this is crazy. I'm literally sitting here editing the video, and Elliot just messaged me just a few minutes ago. Look, that's really him, Elliot. So he literally told me just a few minutes ago that if you want to get 10% off of a Sea Cardinal purchase, you can use code REEFROOKIES, all one word, and he's going to give you guys 10% off either of the tanks that you want to get on his website. I didn't even see that coming. He just did that. It literally just happened right now. It's freaking cool. So now that we understand what kind of water we need to be putting into our aquarium, now we have to figure out what salt do we need. And I'm going to make this very, very simple. Use the salt that is easiest for you to get a hold of. That's it. That's all there is to it. Now, later in your reef keeping life, when you are trying to get that last little bit of pop of color out of some acropora that you've been trying to grow, then yeah, maybe you want to go with some really high-end salt that mixes exactly this way or that way or whatever. But when you're setting up your aquarium, and for the first several months of this aquarium's life, even maybe out to a year, just use whatever you can get as long as it's the right salt for the job. Now, you don't want to use Instant Ocean Purple if you're going to be setting up a reef tank, because that's more of a fish-only salt. It's lower on trace elements. So you would use Instant Ocean Reef Crystals if you're going to be putting corals in the tank. But other than that, you really don't have to worry about anything. I don't personally like Instant Ocean. I've had a lot of bad experience with it. A lot of people that I've been teaching have had bad experiences with it. I'm just using that as an example, just so we're clear. But if your local fish store is a Red Sea dealer and they can get Red Sea salt easy and quick, just use that. It's going to be fine in the end. Some stores don't carry Red Sea. Maybe they carry Fauna Marine or Tropic Marine or Fritz RPM. It's all basically the same. It's just varying levels of trace elements found within the salt that are going to be going into your tank. And you're not going to have to worry about that until you really start getting into the coral keeping side of things. And then there are ways that you can fix that problem later. Being able to get your salt easily and quickly, if you need to just go to the store and get some, is going to make it so that you maintain your tank better than you would if it was a problem to get your salt and you had to wait a week or 2 weeks to get some salt delivered to your house, for example. Now, there is another decision that you get to make at this point, and it's whether you are going to mix your salt in some other container and then put it into the aquarium later, or if you're going to do like I did yesterday and just mix the salt right into the tank. And the thing that's going to determine this for me, usually when I'm setting up an aquarium, is whether or not my rock structure and my sand are going to have to go into the tank first before the water. In this case, the rock structure went in, but I don't have any sand in the tank yet, so I was able to mix my water right in the aquarium using the pumps that are in the aquarium. If you're just getting started, you probably don't have extra flow pumps, extra heaters, extra whatevers laying around so that you can get your salt mixed in a different container. It's a good idea to get that stuff, but you can mix the salt right in the tank. Now, mixing salt is not hard at all, and I'm going to go demonstrate that on my quarantine tank. So all you need for this is a container, a pump of some kind to move water around. Propeller flow pumps work absolutely great for this. And you're going to need a heater, and obviously you're going to need water and salt. You know, some days, I tell you, these videos are harder to make than other days. And today, I am just not flowing. But you're also going to need a salinity measuring device when you're mixing the salt water for your tank. I left that out. I forgot to say that. I was in editing when I remembered that that was a thing I needed to say. So yeah, in addition to those things I just mentioned, you're also going to need some way to measure salinity. Now, there's a bunch of different ways that you can do that. There's the swing needle hydrometers, right, where you just put it in there and the needle points to it. I don't like these very much. They are inaccurate a lot of the time because even just a single bubble on that needle is going to change the measurement. They have to be used very specifically for them to be actually pretty accurate. I prefer a normal refractometer that you just drip the drops on, you hold it up to the light, you look at it and see what the measurement is. That's very easy to distinguish for me. And as long as you calibrate it with calibration solution, each use case before you use it, you'll always have a good measurement with your refractometer. The most accurate way probably is a bubble dropping hygrometer where you have a test tube, you put your salt water in it, you drop the hygrometer in there, it floats at the correct level. And so that's one of the most accurate ways that you can get to test your salinity. Very easy to use, doesn't need any calibrations at all. Or you could use something like a digital pen or a Hanna checker. You literally turn the thing on, you stick it in the water, it gives you a readout, and you're good to go. But those have to be calibrated as well, and sometimes they can be a little bit finicky. So those are pretty much all the options that you have, and I needed to tell you that. Sorry. Now, one thing you do need to pay close attention to are the directions for the salt that you have specifically. Some manufacturers recommend different things with different salts. Instant Ocean, for example, recommends that you mix their salt for at least 24 hours before you use it. Red Sea, however, with the Red Sea Blue Bucket salt, they recommend that you don't mix their salt any more than 2 hours or it could precipitate. And actually, I just had that happen to me the other day. So most salt manufacturers have their formulations mixed up so that it takes 1/2 cup per gallon to get to 1.025 salinity, which is where we run a reef tank. Now, I like to shoot a little bit below that. So in this 5-gallon tank, that would take 2.5 cups of salt to get it to that salinity. I'm going to go a little bit below that to start with. I'm going to start with, I can taste the salt in my mouth, which is kind of weird, but it's true. You can, the dust comes off of it and it gets in your mouth. I'm going to start with 2 cups here, and we're going to see where the salinity comes out to, and then make small adjustments up if we need to. And basically, once you're ready, don't flop it all in there at once, but just kind of begin pouring it in, shake it in, whatever, get it into the tank. It's going to look cloudy like this for a little while. It's going to clear up pretty quickly. You just want to make sure that you give it the proper amount of time that your salt manufacturer, yes, is starting to clear up already, that your manufacturer is going to recommend. Some salts clear faster than others. Fauna Marine, Nios, ESV, those really high-end salts, those things, they clear up so fast, they almost clear as soon as you pour them in the water. Other ones take a little bit longer. It all just depends on how many fillers they use in the salt and how much other stuff is in there. This Red Sea Blue, it's going to take about an hour for it to clear up, and then I'll be able to use it to do the stuff I need to do in the wine glass tank. But that's all there is to mixing salt. Let's talk briefly now about live sand and live rock or dead rock. Now, it is always more beneficial in every case if you can use established living rock from a running system. The sand, it would be nice to get live sand, but it's very difficult to transport established sand without releasing hydrogen sulfide and other things into the tank that we don't want. It's not hard to do with live rock. You can literally just put it in some buckets of water, bring it from the fish store to your house, set it up in your aquarium that already has salt water in it, and you're good to go. Just stack your rocks in there, then pour your sand around that, let it clear up, and you're off to the races. But in my case, if you're going to do an aquascape that's like floating, or you have to glue your rocks together or whatever, and they are dry base rocks, and you're using live sand from a bag, you're going to want to add some additional bacterial population into that thing. You're going to want to get that diversity in there. So my plan for this tank, just so you guys know, is I'm going to get a live rock from 2 different fish stores in their running systems that don't have any problems. Key point. And then I'm going to get some Aquaforest Life Source, and I'm also going to get some ProBio, and I'm going to use Dr. Tim's One and Only to cycle the aquarium. So all of these bacterial sources are going to be going into this tank to seed this dry rock with good bacteria. Now, here's a really important tip about live sand found in the bag, and this is going to come into play in just a few minutes when we talk about cycling this aquarium. Sometimes this stuff sits in a warehouse for a really long time, and any of the available bacteria that would have been in this sand has died off and created ammonia. So one thing that I would recommend when you set these tanks up is when you pour your sand in the tank or when you set the tank up, let the tank run for 24, 36, 48 hours, and then test the ammonia in the tank before you do anything else, because you might end up with a baseline of ammonia from the water that's found in these bags of live sand. Now, I checked mine yesterday, this actual bag, and I didn't have any ammonia in my live sand. I didn't check the date, but this is a pretty new bag of sand. I just got it from the store, and they had just got it in as well. Check yours, though, because if it sat in a warehouse for a while, it might be full of ammonia. That bag got kind of heavy. The reason that it would be full of ammonia is because the good bacteria, the nitrifying bacteria that we need for that live sand to be live and do its job, is aerobic bacteria, meaning they need oxygen to survive. Well, when they're trapped in that bag for who knows how many months on end, the oxygen is depleted and those bacteria die, thereby becoming ammonia. Now, there's another type of bacteria that's probably found, at least in part, in this too, and those are anaerobic bacteria. They don't need oxygen to survive. Those will live, but they don't convert ammonia into nitrites or nitrates. They're responsible for the fourth part of the nitrogen cycle that almost nobody ever talks about. And that's where these guys, the anaerobes, are converting nitrates into nitrogen gas. Now, just follow along with me. I know it's a lot of information. It's all going to make sense in a little while. And the reason that I said all of that is just to let you know that the sand itself really doesn't matter all that much. Now, it's important. It is, by surface area, the largest available area for bacteria to colonize in our tanks, even more so than the live rock. So it's very important. That's why I run a sand bed in my tanks, and I don't run bare bottom tanks. I don't like them. I don't like the way they look. They don't have a natural look to me, so I don't use them. And they also don't have that available surface area for beneficial bacteria to do the thing that they need to do. It can be done. I just choose not to. But that's a decision that you will have to make for yourself, whether or not you're going to run sand or not run sand, run dead base rock, or get established live rock. It's all up to you. But now you know why you might want to go one way or the other. Now, I should note that even though I'm covering it in this video, I do cover mixing salt, I cover base rock and live rock, the nitrogen cycle, and all these things in other videos on my channel. So if you want to dig into those a little bit deeper, you can go find those videos and check that out on those as well. Another decision that you are going to be faced with at this point in your tank's life is whether or not you're going to do a fish-in nitrogen cycle or a fishless nitrogen cycle. So let's talk about the benefits of both. Fish-in nitrogen cycles, in my opinion, have no place in this hobby anymore. We have advanced past the point of needing to subject our animals to a potentially harmful situation to get our tanks cycled. We just don't have to do that anymore. I don't advocate for it. I don't push it really as a good option. I give it to people as an option. If it's up to me, it's fishless every time. But if you're going to do a fish-in nitrogen cycle, you are going to have to make sure that you keep tabs on ammonia immediately from day one. I don't trust those CChem alert badges. I have seen them fail before. So I always recommend having a good ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate test kit if you're going to be getting the tank through the nitrogen cycle using fish. Now, there are other ways, other things that you can add to the tank, stuff like ATM Colony, Fritz Turbo Start 900, Dr. Tim's One and Only, and a whole bunch of other ones that help make the environment less toxic. Let me be clear. It does not make it perfectly safe. It makes it less damaging. And that's the key. You know, people think when you put something like CChem Prime into a tank, it's automatically safe for the fish. And that's not completely true. Is it more safe? Yes, absolutely. Is it completely safe? It's debatable. It's arguably not completely safe. Any concentration of ammonia hurts an animal, bar none. How much it hurts that animal, that's the key. That's the thing that we're talking about when we discuss a fish-in nitrogen cycle. And people always say, well, you have to use hardy fish for a nitrogen cycle. Well, ask yourself why you have to use hardy fish. It's because it's not a nice experience. I guess I'm a little bit more vehemently opposed to it than I thought. That's all right. If you want to do a fish-in nitrogen cycle, that's completely your choice, and you can. Make sure you're keeping tabs on ammonia. Make sure you're using something to detoxify that ammonia every 36 hours. Every 24 hours is even better because that stuff loses its efficacy after about 36 hours. That non-toxic ammonia immediately becomes toxic again, and it starts burning the gills of your fish in your tank. So just make sure you're taking all the proper precautions. It is better to let a fish-in nitrogen cycle take several months and keep the ammonia below 0.25. That's the best way to do that. But that's kind of the problem with a fish-in nitrogen cycle. Sometimes they can take many, many, many months for them to finally finish and for the tank to be populated with enough bacteria to really get the job done, because there's never an abundance of ammonia in the tank to make that process happen quickly, which is why I prefer a fishless nitrogen cycle. Right off the jump from day one, you can use, hang on, right off the jump from day one, you can use something like Dr. Tim's ammonium chloride from a bottle to set your ammonia immediately to where you want it to be. Now, I recommend, if you're going to do this, that you go with 1 ppm of ammonia. Dr. Tim's instructions recommend 2. And here's why I've changed my mind on that. During the nitrogen cycle, the ammonia has to be converted to nitrites. We know that. But that is a 1 to 3 conversion. For every 1 molecule or so of ammonia, you're going to end up with 3 molecules or so of nitrite. That's just how it works. Chemistry says that that's what happens. Well, if you start the tank with 2 ppm of ammonia, that's going to net 6 ppm of nitrites, which is over 5, which is the point at which the bacteria in the tank begin to go dormant for the second phase of the nitrogen cycle. I'm really not sure why Dr. Tim's instructions say to go with 2 ppm. I would love to have that conversation with him. Maybe there's something that I'm missing, but I don't think that there is. Going with ammonia at 2 ppm right off the bat is going to result in nitrites that could potentially stall the second phase of the nitrogen cycle. I've seen it happen. It's happened so much. And this is why I was mentioning the thing earlier about the ammonia in the bags of live sand. Because if you don't check the ammonia, if you don't let the tank run and you check the ammonia after you've added the sand, it might be 0.5. It might have added 1.0 ppm of ammonia already just from the stuff that was in those bags and the stuff that's coming off the rocks. Well, if you don't check that and you assume that it's 0, and then you dose the Dr. Tim's ammonium chloride into the tank to get yourself to 1 ppm, if it's already 1, now you're at 2, but you didn't know that. And if you follow Dr. Tim's instructions on his ammonium chloride and you dose it for 2 ppm, well, now you're at 3, and you're definitely going to have more way sky-high nitrites after the conversion is done. That's why I say always, when you put the sand and rocks in the tank, let it run for a couple of days before you decide what your next step is going to be. And just test the ammonia and go from there. If it's 0, set that sucker at 1 ppm, add your bacteria to get the nitrogen cycle kicked off, and let her ride. Now, I know that was a lot of information also about the nitrogen cycle, and maybe it was a little bit disjointed. I hope not, but I have videos on the channel about that, so make sure you check those out if you want an in-depth explanation of what's going on there. My purpose is here just to let you know what decisions you're going to have to make when you reach this point in your journey. Now, one more quick thing that I would say about the nitrogen cycle portion of this process is that you don't need to run a skimmer or anything else like that. You don't need to have carbon. You don't need to have ChemiPure. You don't need to have any of that stuff in the tank while you're going through the nitrogen cycle. In fact, I would say that the only thing you do need in the tank is a filter sock, filter pad, filter media of some kind to mechanically filter the particulates out of the water. You don't want to be doing any biological or chemical filtration at this point in the tank's life, because you were trying to build a bacterial biome here. You're not trying to make the water sterile or anything like that. So we don't want to overfilter the tank at this point. Currently, in this tank, there's nothing in here but these rocks. And I'm going to be kicking off the nitrogen cycle in just a little while. Now, one thing that you do need to be aware of is that in some bags of live sand, they will have a clarifier just like this. It's perfectly safe to use for your aquarium. When I pour this in here, this thing is going to go absolutely dusty and cloudy, and this stuff is supposed to help. I've always used it. I don't know how much it actually does help, but it doesn't hurt anything, so you might as well. Just be sure that you get it out of the bag and it doesn't stay in the aquarium by accident. The sand that I'm going with for this tank is Carib Sea Fiji Pink. So let's go ahead and get this in here. It's going to be super, super cloudy for probably a day, maybe 2 days. I'm hoping that this 1 14-pound bag is going to be enough, because I would very much like to just take the other one back and get my money back. So taking a look at this much, the level of the sand down here, it's not that same way on every side. It does go, down towards the back there, but I think that's actually going to be enough sand for me to do what I want to do with the tank. So cool, 1 bag. So we're ready to get the ammonia in this tank. Now, Dr. Tim's instructions say on the new bottles, there's an old formulation and a new formulation. So make sure you read the instructions on your bottle to know which one you have. It says 4 drops of this per US gallon or 1 drop per liter in the volume of the aquarium to achieve an ammonia concentration of 2 ppm. But I'm not shooting for 2. I'm shooting for 1. So I'm going to cut that in half. This is a 22-gallon aquarium, 2 drops per gallon, 44 drops. 44 and a little bit. Okay. Now, just to get things kicked off, this is what I have on hand. This is a Magitarium biological booster. It's Petco's brand. I wanted to get this just to see if it would get the job done. It's kind of new to the market. It's sort of unproven at this point, so I figured why not give it a shot, see if we can cycle this tank with this. If it doesn't work, we'll move on to the stuff that I know that is good to go. I suspect that it will probably do the job, but let's get it in here and see. They recommend 5 milliliters per 10 gallons and says that this 4-ounce bottle will treat 240 gallons. Just so you know that. Not sponsored either. So I have a syringe. We're going to go ahead and pop that top off, and we're going to fill this thing up to 5 milliliters, just like that. Per 10 gallons, we got to go to 10. 10 milliliters, just like that. Pop the top, let it go. Okay, so one more thing, and then I'm going to let you go. The 3D printables that are getting made for this aquarium, I've had to make several adjustments to them, and I apologize for that. But they are almost ready to go for the filter sock holder, the filter basket that fits in the filter sock holder, and also the media basket for the middle of the back of the tank. I'm printing the new revisions right now, and if I check them out, they look good on the tank. I'm going to get those things rocking and rolling and get them over to Elliot. He's going to have them on his website, so you'll be able to get those 3D printables directly from Sea Cardinal and not from me. But the designs are looking really cool, and I'm excited to have them ready to go.